Start, sir. Please start.
Okay. So good afternoon to all of you students, and I welcome you so for this session of management accounting is concerned. If you remember, we have already completed material variances in standard costing, and we have started with labor, and we have also discussed the important phenomena of calculating the various labor variances are concerned. Now we are going to start from this table. So you have to prepare a table comprising of 10 columns, and your heading will be statement showing the basic calculations for the computation of labor cost variances when there is no idle time. So if there is no idle time, then how you are going to compute the various labor cost variances that is depicted in the table. First, we are having a column that is type of labor, and under type of labor, there are three types of laborers, assuming skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled, then total. Then in the second column, we are going to write SH for AO, means standard hours for actual output. Then our third column is standard rate. Next column is standard hours for actual output into standard rate. That we have to consider as 1. Then we are having actual hours. And remember, we are considering there is no idle time. Then next column is actual rate. Then we are having actual hours into actual rate, let it be 2. Then actual hours into standard rate, let it be 3. Then RH, revised hours. And the last, the 10th column is revised hours into standard rate, let it be 4. And once we get all the information in this table, then for each grade of labor, we are going to calculate the various variances. That is labor cost variance, that is 1 minus 2, that is SH into SR minus AH into AR. Then labor efficiency variance, it is 1 minus 3, that is SH into SR minus AH into SR. Then we are having labor yield variance, and this labor yield variance is 1 minus 4, that is standard hours into standard rate minus revised hours into standard rate. Then comes labor mix variance, that is 4 minus 3, that is RH into SR minus AH into SR. Then we are having labor rate variance, that is 3 minus 2, AH into SR minus AH into AR. So we got all the variances: labor cost, labor efficiency, labor yield, labor mix, and labor rate. Now we have to do the verification. Labor cost variance is equal to labor efficiency plus labor rate variance, and labor efficiency variance is equal to labor yield variance plus labor mix variance. Alternative formula for labor yield variance, That is total SH into SR divided by total standard hours into total standard hours minus total actual hours. So alternative formula labor yield variance is not required. Now we are going to compile a table with two more extra columns when there is idle time. So statement showing the basic calculations for the computation of labor cost variances when there is idle time. So we'll be having 12 columns. First column, type of labor, and the type of labor, we are going to jot down the various grades of labors, namely skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled. Then we take the total. So SH for AO, standard hours for actual output, then standard rate, then SH into SR, let it be 1, then AH, then AR, then AH into AR, let it be 2, then AH into SR, let it be 3, then APH, that is actual possible hours, then actual possible hours into standard rate, let it be 4, then revised possible hours, and ultimately RPH, revised possible hours into standard rate, that is number 5. And then we are going to check the labor cost variance, labor efficiency plus labor rate. Labor efficiency variance is equal to labor yield variance plus labor mix variance plus idle time variance. Now, actual productive hours, that is actual hours minus idle hours, and revised productive hours is equal to standard hours of one type of labor divided by total standard hours of all types of labor, and this ratio is multiplied by total actual productive hours of all types of labors. Now, revised productive hours are calculated by dividing the total actual productive hours in standard labor mix ratio. Then we may have direct labor revision variance, that is original standard cost for actual output minus revised standard cost for actual output. Now, we are going to start and solve this problem. The details regarding composition and the weekly wage rate of labor force engaged on a job scheduled to be completed in 30 weeks are as follows. Category of workers, we are having skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled. Standard number of laborers, 75, 45, and 60. And standard weekly wage rate is 60, 40, and 30. Next, we are having actual, that is actual number of laborers, then weekly wage rate rupees. Now, please give me 1 minute. So, we are having actual number of laborers and actual weekly wage rate. And we are given information so for skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled laborers are concerned. Remember that at the beginning of the question, It is given job schedule to be completed in 30 weeks, and at the end, it is given the work is actually completed in 32 weeks. So there is a change in the number of weeks. Actually, 2 weeks are more as compared to the scheduled 30 weeks. Here we are going to calculate the various labor cost variances. Now, like material, we are going to have as simple as that is type of labor, skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled, then standard weeks, that is SW, that is number of laborers as per the standard multiplied by 30 weeks. It comes to 2250. Then for semi-skilled, 45 into 30, it comes to 1350. And unskilled, 16 to 30, that is 1800. So total standard weeks comes to 5400. Now, so far actual weeks are concerned, termed as AW, we are having actual number of laborers multiplied by actual weeks, that is 17 to 32, that is 2240, 30 into 32, that is 960, and 80 into 32, it comes to 2560. So actual weeks comes to 5760. Since there is a difference between standard weeks SW and actual weeks AW, hence we should go for calculating revised weeks, that is AW, and it is calculated as 2250 divided by 5400 multiplied by 5760. So revised weeks comes to 2400. Similarly, for semi-skilled, 1350 divided by 5400 multiplied by 5760, it comes to 1440. Next, 1800 divided by 5400 multiplied by 5760, it comes to 1920. So actual weeks and revised standard weeks total is same. Now we are going to compute we are going to present the table, and on the top we are writing statement showing the basic calculations for the computation of labor cost variances. So we are having 10 columns, that is type of labor, skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled. Then we have already computed standard weeks for actual output. It is 2250 for skilled, 1350 for semi-skilled, and 1800 for unskilled. Total is 5400. Standard rate is given in the question, 60, 40, and 30, respectively for skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled. Then we are having standard weeks into standard rate, let it be 1, and it comes to 1,35,000, 54,000, and again 54,000. Okay, so total comes to 2,43,000. Then actual weeks, we are having 2240 960 and 2570. Total is 5760. And actual rate is 70, 50 and 20. Then AW into AR, let it be 2. We get 156,800, 48,000 and 51,200. Total is 2,56,000. Then AW into standard rate, it comes to 1,34,400, 38,400, 76,800. Total comes to 2,49,600. Then we have calculated revised weeks. Remember, here we are mentioning as weeks. If the weeks is not mentioned, hours are mentioned, then it will be SR for AO, then SR, okay, that is SH, standard hours. If it is given in the hours, then it will be SH for AO, then SR, then SH into SR, then AR, that is AH, then AR, then AH into AR, then AH into SR, then revised hours, ultimately revised hours into standard rate. Since here it is given in weeks, we are going to calculate in terms of weeks. That is AW into SR, let it be 3. That is 1,34,400. Then 38,400. 76,800. Total comes to 2,49,600. And revised weeks, we have calculated as RW. That is 2,400. 1,440. 1,920. Total comes to 5,760. Then our W into SR, we get 1,44,000, 57,600, again 57,600. Total is 2,59,200. Now we are going to calculate the variances for each grade of labor. So we are having labor cost variance, that is 1 minus 2. That is SW into SR minus AW into AR. For skill, it is 21,800 adverse. For semi-skill, 6,000 favorable. For unskilled, 2,800 favorable. So total labor cost variance comes to 13,000 adverse. Then labor efficiency variance will be having 1 minus 3. That is for skill, it is 600 favorable. For semi-skill, 15,600 favorable. Unskilled, 22,800 adverse. So total 6,600 adverse. Then we are having labor yield variance. That is 1 minus 4. Skilled 9,000 adverse. Semi-skilled 3,600 adverse. Unskilled 3,600 adverse. So total 16,200 adverse. Then we are having labor mix variance. That is 4 minus 3. That is 9,600 favorable. 19,200 favorable. Then 19,200 adverse. And total is 9,600 favorable. And finally, labor rate variance is 3 minus 2. So for skilled, it is 22,400 adverse. Semi-skilled, 9,600 adverse. Unskilled, 25,600 favorable. So total comes to 6,400 adverse. So we are having labor cost variance is equal to labor efficiency variance plus labor rate variance. So 6,600 adverts, and again 6,400 adverts. Total comes to 13,000 adverts, which is the labor cost variance. Again, labor efficiency variance is equal to labor yield variance plus labor mix variance. Okay, so 16,200 adverts, 9,600 favorable. Okay, so labor efficiency comes to 6,600 adverts. Alternative is not required. Now we are coming to next problem. Hope you have understood the first one. 100 skilled workmen, 40 semi-skilled workmen, and 60 unskilled workmen were to work to get a contract job completed within 30 weeks. The standard weekly wages were rupees 60, rupees 36, and rupees 24 respectively. The job was actually completed in 32 weeks by 80 skilled, 50 semi-skilled, and 70 unskilled workmen were paid rupees 65, rupees 40, and rupees 20 respectively as weekly wages. Here also we are required to calculate the various labor variances. Remember here, standard weeks is 30 weeks and actual weeks are 32. These are not same. Hence, at the first instance, we are going to calculate with reference to each grade of labor, standard week that is SW, actual weeks that is AW, and revised weeks that is RW. So we are going to take the figure from the problem given, and standard weeks we write 100 into 30, that is 3,000. Semi-scale 40 into 30, that is 1,200. Unskilled 60 into 30, that is 1,800. So total standard weeks is 6,000. Again, taking into consideration the information from the problem, we calculate actual weeks, that is AW, 80 into 32, 50 into 32, 80 into 32, 2560, 50 into 32, 1600, 70 into 32, that is 2240. And if we add, we get 6,400 is the actual weeks. Then revised weeks we calculate, that is RW, 3,000 divided by 6,000 into 6,400. It comes to 3,200. Then 1,200 divided by 6,000 divided by 6,000 into 6,400. Okay, it comes to 1280, and 1800 divided by 6,000 into 6,400. It comes to, that is 1920. So if you look into the table, you will find that we are having all information that is standard weeks total, actual weeks total, revised weeks total, and actual week AW and revised weeks RW are the same. Now, here also there is no idle time. Hence, we are going to calculate the labor cost variances, keeping in mind there is no idle time, and we write statement showing the basic calculations for the computation of labor cost variances. Format is the same: type of labor, skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled. Then SW for AO, that is 3,000, 1,200, and 1,800. Total is 6,000. Standard rate is given in the question, that is 60, 36, and 24. Then SW into SR, let it be 1, that is 1,80,000. Semi-skill 43,200 and unskilled also 43,200. So total comes to 2,66,400. Then actual weeks we are having 2,560, 1,600, and 2,240. Total comes to 6,400. And actual rate is given 65, 40, and 20. So AW into AR we get 1,66,400, 64,000, and 44,800. Total comes to 2,75,200. And AW into AR, let it be 2. Then AW into SR, that is 1,53,600, 57,600, 53,760. Total comes to 2,64,960. RW we have already calculated, that is 3,200, 1,280, 1,920. Total is 6,400. And RW into SR, let it be 4. It comes to 1,92, then 46,080, and also 46,080. So total RW into SR, it is 284,160. Now we should go for checking the variances. Whatever we have computed, that we are going to verify. So we are having skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled total. Labor cost variance is 1 minus 2, that is 13,600 favorable. Semi-skilled 20,800 adverse. Unskilled 1,600 adverse, and total 8,800 adverse. Labor efficiency variance is 1 minus 3, that is 26,400 favorable, 14,400 adverse, 10,560 adverse, and 1440 favorable. Then labor yield variance is 1 minus 4, that is 12,000 adverse, 2,880 adverse, 2,880 again adverse for unskilled. So total comes to 1,760 adverse. The labor mix variance, we are having 4 minus 3, that is 38,400 favorable, 11,520 adverse, 7,680 adverse, and 19,200 favorable. And finally, we are having labor rate variance, that is 3 minus 2, skilled 12,800 adverse, semi-skilled 6,400 adverse, unskilled 8,960 favorable. So total labor rate variance comes to 10,240 adverse. Now we are going to verify labor cost variance is equal to labor efficiency plus labor rate, that is 1,440 favorable plus 10240 adverse, and virtually labor cost variance is rupees 8,800 adverse. Checked. And again, labor efficiency variance is equal to labor yield variance plus labor mix variance, which is 17,760 adverse plus 19,200 favorable, which is coming to rupees 1440 favorable. Okay, so we are sure that the solution is correct. Now we are going to have a new problem. Here, in this case, there will be idle time. Let us look into the problem. A gang of workers normally consists of 30 men, 15 women, and 10 boys. They are paid at standard hourly rates as under men 80 paise, women 60 paise, and boys 40 paise. In a normal working week of 40 hours, the gang is expected to produce 2,000 units of output. During the week ended 31st December, the gang consisted of 40 men, 10 women, and 5 boys. The actual wages paid were 70 paise, 65 paise, and 30 paise, respectively. 4 hours were lost due to abnormal idle time, and 1,600 units were produced. So what we are required to calculate? We are required to calculate number 1, wage variance. Number 2, wage rate variance. Number 2, labor efficiency variance. Number 4, gang composition variance. Another name of labor mix variance. Then labor idle time variance. And last but not the least, that is labor yield variance. So in this case, if you give attention to the problem, it is seen that it is written over here in the question, 4 hours were lost due to abnormal idle time and 1,600 units were produced. So we are required to make certain basic calculations, that is standard hours for actual output, that is SH, which is nothing but 30 into 40 divided by 2000 into 1600. So what is 2000? In a normal working week of 40 hours, the gang is expected to produce 2000 units of output, but 1600 units were produced. Hence, standard hours for actual output, that is SH, will be 30 into 40 by 2000 into 1600, that is 960. Similar in fashion or manner, 15 into 40 divided by 2000 into 1600, it comes to 480, that is for women. And last but not the least, that is boys. 10 into 40 divided by 2000 into 1600, it comes to 320. So total comes to 1760. Next, actual hours for actual output, that is AH. Men is 40 into 40, that is 1600. Women 10 into 40, that is 400. Boys 5 into 40, that is 200. So total comes to 2200. Now there is idle hours and 4 hours are lost due to idle time. Hence, we are going to have idle time for men 40 into 4, that is 160. For women 10 into 4, that is 40. Boys 5 into 4 is equal to 20. And total idle hours is 220. So From standard hours for actual output, we have got then actual hours for actual output. We have also calculated, now we have also calculated idle hours that is to be deducted. Then we get actual productive hours, that is men 1440, women 360, boys 180, and total 1980. Now we are going to calculate revised productive hours, that is RPH, which is 960 divided by 1760 multiplied by 1980, it comes to 1080. That is for men. For women, it is 480 divided by 1760 into 1980, it comes to 540. And for boys, it is 320 divided by 1760 multiplied by 1980, it comes to 360. So, standard hours for actual output, SH. Actual hours for actual output, AH. Idle hours. Actual productive hours, APH. And revised productive hours, RPH. All we have calculated. Remember, today I have already told you at the starting of the class that when there is idle time, and if there is any idle time, then we are required to make two more columns to calculate the various labor variances. So that's why you are writing statement showing the basic calculations for the computation of labor cost variances. So here we are having two more additional columns. So first column is type of labor, and accordingly we are going to write below that men, women, boys. Then standard hours for actual output 960, 480, 320. Total comes to 1760. Standard rate is given 0.80, 0.60, 0.40. Then we get SH into SR, let it be 1. It comes to 768, then 288, then 128. So total comes to 1184. Then AH, we are going to jot it down 1600, 400, then 200. Total comes to 2200. Actual rate is given, that is 0.70, 0.65, and 0.30. And AH into AR, let it be 2, we get 1120, 260, and 60. Total is 1440. Next, we are going to have AH into SR, let it be 3. That is 1280, 240, and 80. Total comes to 1600. Then actual productive hours 1440, 360, 180. Total is 1980. Then actual productive hours into standard rate, let it be 4. That is 1152, 216, and 72. Total is 1440. Now revised productive hours we have already calculated, and we are going to jot it down. That is 1080, 540, and 360. So revised productive hours into standard rate, we get it as number 5, 864, 324, and 144. It comes to 1332. So once the table is over, then we should go for computation of various labor variances under the heading men, women, boys, and total. So we are having labor cost variance, that is 1 minus 2. That is SH into SR minus AH into AR. And for men, it is 352 adverse. Similarly, for women, it is 28 favorable. For boys, it is 68 favorable. And after adding all, we got total labor cost variance is 256 adverse. Our next one is labor efficiency variance, which we calculate from the table that we have computed. That is 1 minus 3, that is SH into SR minus AH into SR. And accordingly, labor efficiency variance for men, it is 512 adverse. For women, it is 48 favorable. And for boys, it is also 48 favorable. So total labor efficiency variance comes to 416 adverse. Next, we go to calculate the labor yield variance. And the same is calculated by making a difference between, that is 1 minus 5, that is SH into SR minus RPH into SR, that is revised productive hours into standard rate. And accordingly, we get men 96 adverse, women 36 adverse, boys 16 adverse, and total labor yield variance comes to 148 adverse. Then we go for to calculate the labor mix variance, and we get it by deducting 4 from 5, that is 5 minus 4, that is RPH into SR, that is 5, minus APH into SR, that is 4. So we get men 288 adverse, women 108 favorable, boys 72 favorable, and total mix variance is 108 adverse. Then we should go for to calculate the idle time variance, which is the difference between column 4 and column 3, that is 4 minus 3, and men it is 128 adverse. For women it is 24 adverse. For boys 8, that is adverse. So total idle time variance is 160 adverse. Remember, for idle time, the workers are paid wages, but no production is actually to be made. Hence, this idle time variance is always adverse. Okay. And last, we are going to have labor rate variance. That is 3 minus 2, that is AH into SR minus AH into AR, which comes to, for men, it is 160 favorable. For women, it is 20 adverse. For boys, it is 20 favorable, and total 160 favorable. Then we should go to verify the variances that we have computed, that is labor cost variance is equal to labor efficiency variance plus labor rate variance. So putting the respective figures for labor efficiency and labor rate, that is rupees 416 adverse, rupees 160 favorable, we get 256 adverse. And labor efficiency variance is equal to labor yield variance plus labor mix variance plus idle time variance. So 148 adverse, 108 adverse, 160 adverse. So total comes to 416 adverse. That is reflected in the calculation. Hope you have understood. Now we are coming to our next question. The standard labor complement and the actual labor complement engaged in a week for a job are as under: skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled. Standard number of workers in the gang, standard wage rate per hour rupees. Actual number of workers employed in the gang during the week. actual wage rate per hour during the 40 hours working week, the gang produced 1,800 standard day or hours of work. And we are required to compute the labor cost variances. So we are having first total hours, then standard hours, and if they are not same, then revised hours. So total hours 32 into 40, that is 1280 for skill. 12 into 40, that is 480 for semi-skill. And 6 into 40, that is 240 for unskilled. Total is 2000. Then standard hours is 1280 by 2000 into 1800. It comes to 1152. 480 divided by 2000 into 1800. It comes to 432. Then 240 divided by 2000 into 1800. It comes to 216. So total comes to 1800. Then revised hours 1152 divided by 1800 into 2000. It comes to 1280. Then for semi-scale 432 divided by 1800 into 2000. It comes to 480. And for unskilled it is 216 by 1800 into 2000. It comes to 240. So total is 2000. So once this basic calculation is done, then we are going to have the computation of various labor variances. And remember here, idle time is not there. Hence, our statement showing the basic calculations for the computation of labor cost variances will be restricted to 10 columns. So we are having type of labor, skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled. Then standard hours for actual output. All of you have got, we have jotted down 1152, 432, 216, that is 1800. Standard rate is 3, 2, and 1. Then SH into SR, let it be 1, it comes to 3456. 864 and 216, that is 4536. Actual hours 1120, 720, and 160. Total is 2000. Actual rate is 432. So actual hours into actual rate, let it be 2, that is 4480, 2160, and 320. Total is 6960. Then age into SR, let it be 3, that is 3360. 1440, 160. Total comes to 4960. Then revised hours 1280. We have calculated 480 and 240. Total is 2000. And finally, revised hours into standard rate, that is 4. It comes to 3840, 960, 240. So total comes to 5040. So once these are done, then we should go to calculate the various variances for each grade of labor separately, and we take the total. So skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled, and total. And in the left-hand side, you may write particulars. Then labor cost variance is 1 minus 2. That is for skill, it is 1024 adverse. Semi-scale 1296 adverse. Unskilled 104 adverse. So total comes to 2420 adverse. That is labor cost variance. Then labor efficiency variance is 1 minus 3. Skilled 96 favorable. Semi-skilled 576 adverse. Unskilled 56 favorable. Total comes to 424 adverse. Then labor yield variance 1 minus 4, that is 384 adverts, 96 adverts, 24 adverts, so 504 adverts. Then labor mix variance, 4 minus 3, skilled 480 favorable, semi-skilled 480 adverse, and unskilled 80 favorable. So ultimatum total labor mix variance is 80 favorable. And finally, labor rate variance is equal to, that is 3 minus 2. For skilled it is 1200 adverse, semi-skilled 720 adverse, unskilled 160 adverse, and total 2000 adverse. That is the result. Then we may go for the verification. Labor cost variance is equal to labor efficiency variance plus labor rate variance. That is rupees 424 adverse, rupees 2000 adverse. So it is 2424 adverse. As it is seen from the calculation, it matches with the labor cost variance. Then labor efficiency variance is equal to labor yield variance plus labor mix variance. That is rupees 504 adverse plus 80 favorable. So total labor efficiency variance is 424 adverse. That we have calculated in the calculation, that labor efficiency variance total, it is 424 adverse. Hope you have understood. Now we are coming to last problem. Just like material, we may have labor problem with missing information. Okay. So it is given, compute the missing data indicated by question marks from the following. So you are having three columns. First column particulars, second column labor grade A, and third column labor grade B. Then we are having standard wage rate per hour for A grade of labor, rupees 12, and for B grade of labor, it is rupees 15. Actual wage rate per hour for A it is 15, for B it is 20. Standard hours for grade A laborers 50, but for grade B labor it is not given, that is question mark. Actual hours for labor grade A not given, but for labor grade B it is given 70. Then labor rate variance, both are question marks. Labor efficiency variance for grade A, question mark, and for labor grade B it is 300 adverse. Labor cost variance not given, question mark, grade A, grade B. But labor mix variance for both together was rupees 45 adverse. That is the total labor mix variance. That is given in the question. So if you remember, in my past class, when we have gone through materials, we have discussed a problem with missing information. So we are having basic calculations. That is number one, standard hours of labor grade B. We have to find it out. Now, labor efficiency variance, we know standard hours for actual production minus actual hours multiplied by standard rate. Labor efficiency is given in the questions rupees 300 adverse. Hence we put minus rupees 300. Standard rate is 15. We do not know what is SH, but H we know 70. So by solving this, we get standard hours for actual production, that is 70 minus 20, it comes to 50 hours. Now, actual hours of labor grade A, that we are going to calculate, and let us assume that actual labor for grade A be X. Then we are going to draw the same table that we have drawn in case when there is no idle time of laborers, that is 10 columns. So first column type of labor, then standard hours for actual output, then standard rate, then standard hours for actual output into standard rate, that is 1, then actual hours, then actual rate, then actual hours into actual rate, let it be 2, then age into SR, let it be 3, then revised hours, let it be RH, and finally RH into SR, let it be 4. So whatever is known to us, we are jotting down in the table, and whatever is unknown, that we are going to write as X. So obviously, under type of labor, we are going to write A. Standard hours for actual output, 50 given, standard rate 12 given. So standard hours into standard rate, that is 1, age, then AR, then age into AR, let it be 2, age into SR, let it be 3, then RH into SR, let it be 4. Now, we are going to jot it down. Type of labor A. Second column SH for AO is 50. Standard rate is 12. So SH into SR, it comes to 600. Age, do not know. Okay. That's why we are writing as X. Actual rate is given 15. Then H into SR, let it be 2, it comes to 15x. Then age into SR, let it be 3, it comes to 12x. Then RH, that is 35 plus x by 2 plus 35 plus x by 2. So RH into SR, it comes to 420 plus 6 plus 6x and 525 plus 7.5x. So age we got 70 plus x. H into AR we got 1400 plus 15x. Age into SR we got 1050 plus 12x. And RH into SR 945 plus 13.5x. Now we know labor mix variance is RH into SR minus AH into SR. So labor mix variance is given in the question as 45 adverse. Hence, we are going to write the negative sign before rupees 45. And you are writing minus 45 is equal to RH 945 plus SR 13.5x minus 1050 plus 12x. And solving, we get x is equal to 40 hours. Okay. Device standard hours we have calculated as we calculate in other cases. So now we can proceed to solve all the variances pertaining to labor by filling in the table. Type of labor AB, SH for AO 50, 50, 100, SR 12 and 15, SH into SR 1, that is 600 and 750, it comes to 1350. Age 40 and 70, that is 110. AR 15 and 20. Then age into AR, let it be 2, that is 600 and 1400, total 2000. Age into SR, let it be 3, that is 480 and 1050, so total comes to 1530. Then RH 55, 55. Then RH into SR 660 and 825. So we get labor cost variance 1 minus 2, it is nil. For A, for B it is 1 minus 2, that is 650 adverse. Total is 650 adverse. Then labor efficiency variance 1 minus 3, that is 120 favorable, B 300 adverse, total 180 adverse. Then labor invariance 1 minus 4, that is 60 adverse, 75 adverse, 135 adverse. Labor mix variance 4 minus 3, that is 180 favorable, 225 adverse, 45 adverse. Labor rate variance 3 minus 2, that is 120 adverse, 350 adverse, and 470 adverse. Verification labor cost variance is equal to labor efficiency variance plus labor rate variance. That is 180 adverse plus 470 adverse. That is 650 adverse. So the question was compute the missing data indicated by question mark from the following. So actual hours for A was not known. We have calculated. Standard hours for B not known, calculated. Labor rate variance for A calculated. Labor efficiency variance for A calculated. Labor rate variance for A calculated. For B calculated. Labor efficiency variance calculated. And labor mix variance for both together was given 45, and accordingly we have solved. So with this, I close labor. Now we are going to have the next chapter, that is standard costing and variance analysis. Now we are going to do the variance analysis so far overhead variances are concerned. Now, please allow me 2 minutes, and in the meantime, please look into the various overheads that I have jotted down, that is total fixed overheads, total variable overheads, budgeted hours for budgeted period, budgeted hours for actual operating period, okay? Then budgeted output for budgeted period, budgeted output for actual operating period, budgeted overheads for budgeted period, and budgeted overheads for actual operating period, standard fixed overhead rate per hour, standard variable overhead rate per hour, then actual hours, actual output, standard hours for actual output, revised budgeted hours, then fixed overhead efficiency, then fixed overhead capacity, then fixed overhead calendar, then fixed overhead expenditure, then fixed overhead volume, then total fixed overhead variance, that is fixed overhead cost variance. Okay. Then variable overhead efficiency variance, variable overhead expenditure variance, total variable overhead variance, that is variable overhead cost variance, and total overhead variances, that is total fixed overhead and total variable overhead. Then we should go to prepare the table. Now, let us look into this. Please allow me 2 minutes. And in the meantime, you just look into this. Okay? Please allow me 2 minutes. Now look, total fixed overheads is fixed overhead plus fixed portion of same variable overheads or total overheads minus total variable overheads. Then total variable overheads plus variable portion of same variable overheads or total overheads minus total fixed overheads. Then budgeted hours for budgeted period, we may calculate as budgeted number of weeks into budgeted number of working days per week multiplied by budgeted number of working hours per day into budgeted number of workers. That is one calculation. Or it may be budgeted output into standard time to produce 1 unit of output, or budgeted output divided by budgeted output per man hour in units. Or it may be total budgeted overhead divided by standard overhead rate per hour. Then comes budgeted hours for actual operating period. In short, it is called BH. That is budgeted hours for budgeted period divided by budgeted period into actual operating period. Now, if actual operating period differs from budgeted period, proportionate budgeted hours for actual operating period should be calculated. I'm just given one example. If budgeted hours given for a budgeted period of 12 months are 24,000 and operating period is 3 months, then budgeted hours for 3 months period should be calculated at 24,000 into 3 by 12, that is 6,000. Next, we are having budgeted output for budgeted period. It is nothing but budgeted hours divided by standard time to produce 1 unit of output, or budgeted hours into output per man hour in units, or budgeted overhead divided by standard overhead rate per unit. And again, budgeted output for actual operating period, we may calculate as budgeted output for budgeted period divided by budgeted period multiplied by actual operating period. Then we switch over to item number 7. Budgeted overheads for budgeted period, we can calculate as budgeted hours into standard overhead rate per hour, or budgeted output into standard overhead rate per unit. For your information, we may calculate standard overhead rate per hour and standard overhead rate per unit also, depending upon the questions that will be given to us. Then number 8, budgeted overheads for actual operating period, that we calculate budgeted overheads for budgeted period divided by budgeted period into actual operating period. If actual operating period differs from budgeted period, proportionate budgeted overheads for actual operating period should be calculated. Then we are coming to the most important, that is standard fixed overhead rate per hour. In short, it is called SFOR. That is budgeted fixed overhead divided by budgeted hours, or standard overhead rate per hour. That is total standard overhead rate per hour minus standard variable overhead rate per hour. Again, standard variable overhead rate per hour, SVOR, we get budgeted variable overhead divided by budgeted hours, or standard overhead rate per hour minus standard fixed overhead rate per hour, or change in total overheads at two different levels of activity divided by change in budgeted hours at two different levels of activity. Then we are going to have actual hours. In short, it is called age. That is actual number of weeks into actual number of working days per week multiplied by actual number of working hours per day multiplied by actual number of workers. That is one calculation. Or it can be calculated as actual output into actual time to produce 1 unit of output, or actual output divided by actual output per man hour in units. Again, actual output is equal to actual hours divided by actual time taken to produce 1 unit of output, or actual hours into output per man hour in units, or we may have actual sales plus closing stock of finished output plus closing stock of equivalent units of work in progress minus opening stock of finished output minus opening stock of equivalent units of work in progress. Okay, when there is both opening and closing work in progress, then we are going to convert it into equivalent units. Then standard hours for actual output, that is SH, is equal to budgeted hours by budgeted output into actual output. Then revised budgeted hours, that is RBH, is equal to actual number of working days into budgeted working hours per day into budgeted number of workers. Or it may be calculated on the basis of budgeted number of working hours multiplied by actual number of working days divided by budgeted number of working days. Then fixed overhead efficiency variance, it will be the difference between standard fixed overhead for standard hours minus standard fixed overhead for actual hours, or SH into SFOR minus AH into SFOR, or SFOR divided by standard hours minus actual hours. Now we are coming to fixed overhead capacity variance, which is the difference between standard fixed overhead for actual hours minus budgeted fixed overhead for budgeted hours. Or we may write as AH into SFOR minus PH into SFOR, or we may take SFOR common, and that is the difference between actual hours and budgeted hours. Then fixed overhead calendar variance. Remember, calendar variance will come into the picture where you are supposed to work for 26 days in a month, but you have worked 25 days, or you are required to work 25 days, but you have worked 26 days. Then fixed overhead calendar variance will come, which is nothing but is the difference between budgeted fixed overhead for revised budgeted hours minus budgeted fixed overhead for budgeted hours. Or we write RBH into SFOR minus BH into SFOR. We take SFOR common, then it will be revised budgeted hours minus budgeted hours. Then fixed overhead expenditure variance, it is nothing but it is the difference between budgeted fixed overhead for budgeted hours minus actual fixed overhead for actual hours. That is budgeted fixed overhead minus actual fixed overhead. Or we may compute it as BH into SFOR minus AH into AFOR. Then fixed overhead volume variance. It is the difference between standard fixed overhead for standard hours minus budgeted fixed overhead for budgeted hours, or SH into SFOR minus BH into SFOR. Or we may take common standard fixed overhead rate multiplied by difference between standard hours and budgeted hours. Or as a checking point of view, fixed overhead efficiency variance plus fixed overhead capacity variance plus fixed overhead calendar variance. Then total fixed overhead variance may compute, that is standard fixed overhead for standard hours minus actual fixed overhead for actual hours, or SH into SFOR minus AH into AFOR. Or as a checking, total fixed overhead variance is equal to fixed overhead volume variance plus fixed overhead expenditure variance, or fixed overhead efficiency variance plus fixed overhead capacity variance plus fixed overhead calendar variance plus fixed overhead expenditure variance. Or total overhead variance minus total variable overhead variance. Now, we are having variable overhead efficiency variance, that is standard variable overheads for standard hours minus standard variable overheads for actual hours, or SH into SVOR, that is standard variable overhead rate per hour minus actual hours into standard variable overhead rate per hour. We may take common SVOR common, and it is multiplied by the difference between standard hours minus actual hours. Then variable overhead expenditure variance is nothing but it is standard variable overheads for actual hours minus actual variable overheads for actual hours. Or we may write as H into SVOR minus H into AVOR, taking H as common. So H into difference between the two rates, standard variable overhead rate minus actual variable overhead rate. Then total variable overhead variance, that is cost variance, that is standard variable overhead for standard hours minus actual variable overhead for actual hours. Or we may write as SH into SVOR minus AH into AVOR. Or as a checking variable overhead efficiency plus variable overhead expenditure variance. Or we may write total overhead variance minus total fixed overhead variance. And finally, total overhead variance, that is comprising of both fixed and variable. So it comes to total fixed overhead variance plus total variable overhead variance. Now, please look into these notes, that is very important, where actual number of working days differ from budgeted number of working days. Fixed overhead calendar variance is also calculated as under. That is revised budgeted fixed overhead for revised budgeted hours minus budgeted overheads for budgeted hours. Or symbolically, that is RBH into SFOR minus BH, that is budgeted overheads into SFOR. Or we may take common SFOR and multiplied by difference between revised budgeted hours and budgeted. Now, when actual number of working days differ from budgeted number of working days, fixed overhead capacity variance is calculated as under. That is standard fixed overhead for actual hours minus revised budgeted overheads for revised budgeted hours, or H into SFOR minus RBH into SFOR, or SFOR multiplied by H minus RBH. Now, BH stands for budgeted hours, SH stands for standard hours, AH stands for actual hours, RBH stands for revised budgeted hours, SFOR means standard fixed overhead rate per hour, SVOR standard variable overhead rate per hour, AFOR actual fixed overhead rate per hour, and AVOR, that is actual variable overhead rate per hour. Now, that is all formula based or formulae, but in practical, when you will be solving the problems in the examination hall, remember you are required to prepare tables, and you have to remember when the actual number of working days are equal to the budgeted number of working days, then we are required to prepare a statement showing the basic calculations for the computation of overhead variances. As you know, we have applied the table in case of material variances, in case of labor variances, and in case of overhead variances also. We are going to prepare the table. Please try to understand the table. There will be 10 columns, and remember, when the actual number of working days are equal to the budgeted number of working days, So we are going to make the 10 columns, and first column will be nature of overhead. And obviously under nature of overhead, there will be two types of overheads. One is fixed, another one is variable. Then we are having standard hours for actual output, then standard rate, then SH into SR, we have to consider it as 1, then H, then AR, then H into AR, let it be 2, then AH into SR, let it be 3, then VH, and last one is VH into SR, let it be 4. And we are going to jot down all the information by doing the basic calculations and fill up the table. Once you fill it up, then fixed overhead efficiency variance will be 1 minus 3. Fixed overhead capacity is 3 minus 4. Fixed overhead expenditure is 4 minus 2. Variable overhead efficiency is 1 minus 3. Variable overhead expenditure 3 minus 2. And total overhead cost variance will be the aggregate of all. Okay. Now, in the verification part, fixed overhead volume variance will be fixed overhead efficiency variance plus fixed overhead capacity variance. Total fixed overhead cost variance will be fixed overhead volume variance plus fixed overhead expenditure variance. Total variable overhead cost variance is equal to variable overhead efficiency variance plus variable overhead expenditure variance. And total overhead cost variance, of course, total fixed overhead cost variance plus total variable overhead cost variance. Now, it may so happen that in any question, when the actual number of working days are different from the budgeted number of working days, hence our table should be comprising of 12 columns. We have to add 2 more columns. Okay, and accordingly, the table will be nature of overhead, obviously under fixed and variable, because semi-variable is the part of both variable element. Then standard hours for actual output, then standard rate, then standard hours for actual output into standard rate, let it be 1. Then actual hours, then actual rate. Then we'll be having actual hours into actual rate, let it be 2. Then actual hours into standard rate, let it be 3. Then VH budgeted hours. Then budgeted hours into standard rate, let it be 4. Then RVH revised budgeted hours. And finally, RVH into SR, let it be 5. Now, we go for calculating the variances. Fixed overhead efficiency 1 minus 3. Fixed overhead capacity 3 minus 5. Fixed overhead calendar 5 minus 4. Fixed overhead expenditure 4 minus 2. Variable overhead efficiency 1 minus 3. Variable overhead expenditure 3 minus 2. And total overhead cost variance will be A plus B plus C plus D plus F. Okay. Now, you can do the verification as fixed overhead volume is equal to fixed overhead efficiency plus fixed overhead capacity plus fixed overhead calendar. Total fixed overhead cost variance, fixed overhead volume plus fixed overhead expenditure. Total variable overhead cost variance is equal to variable overhead efficiency plus variable overhead expenditure. And total overhead cost variance, total fixed overhead cost variance plus total variable overhead cost variance. Okay. Now, I just want to tell you something, then I'll go for solving the problems. Remember, standard costing is such a subject which you are not supposed to mark. Okay, so once you prepare the table for material, labor, and overheads, both variable and fixed, then you just try to understand the mechanism that we are following for calculating the various variances. 1 minus 2, 3 minus 1, 3 minus 2, like that. Okay, so you have to remember and you have to follow the techniques. That I want to mean. Now we are coming to the problem. Calculate is a very simple problem that I have taken at the beginning. Calculate budgeted fixed overheads for the month of April from the following information. So there are two periods, period 1, period 2. We are having budgeted hours both for period 1 and period 2. And we are having budgeted overheads both for period 1 and period 2. And it is given rupees 1,25,000 and rupees 1,40,000. Standard overhead absorption rate, that is rupees 4. Okay. So what is our question? Calculate budgeted fixed overhead for the month of April and also calculate the budgeted hours on which overhead absorption rate is based. So standard overhead absorption rate rupees 4 per hour, it is already given. Now, when you have studied overhead in your group 1, then definitely you have learned how you are going to calculate the variable cost per unit and how you are going to calculate the total fixed cost through different activity levels. Okay, so that we are following here. We are calculating budgeted variable overhead rate per hour, which is nothing but it is change in overhead divided by change in activity level. As it is saying, highest level is 1,40,000 and the lowest level is 1,25,000. We make the difference. And make the difference of budgeted hours. So it is 50 minus 35,000. So budgeted variable overhead rate per hour, we have got rupee 1 per hour. So budgeted variable overhead rate per hour, that is constant. And that we have got, that is rupee 1 per hour. Then total budgeted fixed overheads, we got total budgeted overheads for a particular period, that is 1,25,000 minus 35,000, the budgeted hours for the same period, into budgeted variable overhead rate per hour. Then you get total budgeted fixed overhead as 90,000, which is fixed. So budgeted hours on which overhead absorption rate is based, that is total budgeted fixed overhead divided by standard fixed overhead rate. Okay, that is, again I repeat, budgeted hours on which overhead absorption rate is based, that is total budgeted fixed overhead divided by standard fixed overhead rate, which is 4 minus 1, that is 3. And rupees 90,000 divided by rupees 3, rupees cancels out. So budgeted hours on which overhead absorption rate is based will be 30,000 hours. Okay, now we are coming to the next problem. In Department A, the following data is submitted for the week ended 31st October. Standard output for 40 hours per week is 1,400 units. Standard fixed overhead is given rupees 1,400. Actual output 1,200 units. Actual hours worked 32 hours. Actual fixed overhead rupees 1,500. So what we are required to do? We are required to prepare a statement of variances. Now, remember for calculating the fixed overhead variances, we have to do some basic calculations. Because standard hours for actual output is not given. So standard hours for actual output, which is SH is equal to 40 divided by 40 hours, that is 40 divided by 1,400, that is standard output for 40 hours per week, multiplied by actual output, that is 1,200, so that we get 34.286. Standard overhead rate per hour is rupees 1,400 by 40, that is rupees 35 per hour. And actual overhead rate, that is AR, we get 1,500 divided by 32, which comes to 46.875. Now we are going to prepare the statement, that is statement showing the basic calculations for the computation of overhead variances. So where budgeted hours and actual hours are same, hence we are going to make 10 columns. That is nature of overhead, then standard hours for actual output, then standard rate, then standard hours for actual output into standard rate, let it be 1, then actual hours, then actual rate, then actual hours into standard rate, let it be 2, then actual hours into standard rate, let it be 3, then budgeted hours, and finally budgeted hours into standard rate, let it be 4. So nature of overhead, it is fixed. Standard hours for actual output, we have calculated 34.286. Standard rate is 35. So SH into SR comes to 1,200. Actual hour 32. Actual rate we have calculated 46.875. H into AR, that is 1,500. H into SR, that is 3,1,120. VH is 40. Then VH into standard rate, let it be 4, it comes to 1,400. So fixed overhead efficiency variance will be 1 minus 3, that is rupees 1,200 minus rupees 1,120, that is rupees 80 favorable. Fixed overhead capacity variance, that is 3 minus 4, it comes to rupees 1,120 minus 1,400, it comes to 280 adverse. Fixed overhead expenditure 4 minus 2, that is 1,400 minus 1,500, that is rupees 100 adverse. And total overhead, fixed overhead cost variance will be the aggregate of fixed overhead efficiency, capacity, and fixed overhead expenditure, which comes to rupees 300 adverse. So we can go for the verification, that is fixed overhead volume variance is equal to fixed overhead efficiency plus fixed overhead capacity. It comes to 80 favorable plus 280 adverse, so it is 200 adverse. Okay. Fixed overhead cost variance, that is fixed overhead volume variance plus fixed overhead expenditure, that is 200 adverse plus 100 adverse, it comes to 300 adverse. Now we are going to solve the next problem. And this is an important question which is coming in the examination hall, and it has come many times. The following information is available from the records of a factory. We are given budget and actual. Fixed overhead for June, rupees 10,000 is the budget. For actual, it is 12,000. Production in June units, budget is 2,000, actual is 2,100. Standard time per unit hours, under budget it is 10. Actual hours worked in June, that is 22,000. So we are required to compute the fixed overhead variances like cost, expenditure, volume, capacity, and efficiency. Now, before preparing the computational table, we are required to make some basic calculations. What are those? Number one, standard hours for actual output. It is termed as SH. That is 2,100 into 10, that is 21,000. Standard overhead rate, that is SR, rupees 10,000 divided by 20,000, that is 50 paise per hour. Actual overhead, that is AR, rupees 12,000 divided by 22,000, it comes to rupees 0.545 hour per hour. Okay, now let us proceed. Now we are going to prepare the table, that is statement showing the basic calculations for the computation of overhead variances. Obviously, there is one overhead is given, that is fixed. Standard hours for actual output, 21,000. We have jotted down SR 50. Then SH into SR, it comes to 1, that is 10,500. Then H 22,000, AR 0.545. H into AR, that is 12,000. H into SR, let it be 3, it is 11,000. Budget hours 20,000. And finally, budget hours into standard rate, let it be 4, it is 10,000. Now, fixed overhead efficiency 1 minus 3, that is 10,500 minus 11,000, it comes to rupees 500 adverse. Fixed overhead capacity 3 minus 4, that is 11,000 minus 10,000, that is rupees 1,000 favorable. Fixed overhead expenditure 4 minus 2, that is 10,000 minus 12,000, that is 12,000, that is rupees 2,000 adverse. And total fixed overhead cost variance will be aggregate of fixed overhead efficiency, capacity, and expenditure. Now, we can do the verification. Fixed overhead volume variance is equal to fixed overhead efficiency plus fixed overhead capacity. So 500 adverse plus 1,000 favorable, total comes to 5,000 favorable. Total fixed overhead cost variance, fixed overhead volume plus fixed overhead expenditure, that is 500 favorable plus 2,000 adverse, it comes to 1,500 adverse. Now, it is given calculate all the overhead variances from the following information provided by T Limited. So we are having budget and actual. In budgeted fixed overhead is 30,000, actual is 3690. Variable overhead is 10,000 and actual it is 8910. Budgeted hours is 10,000, actual is 9,900. Output budgeted is 5,000 and actual is 4,500. So before preparing the table, we have to do the necessary workings. that is basic calculations, that is standard hours for actual output, that is SH, is 10,000 by 5,000 into 4,500. It comes to 9,000 hours. Then standard fixed overhead rate per hour, fixed overhead budgeted divided by 10,000 hours. Standard variable rate overhead rate per hour, that is 10,000 by 10,000 hours. It is rupees 1 per hour. Now we are going to fill it up, the table. 10 columns, nature of overhead, standard hours for actual output, standard rate. Then SH into SR, that is 1, AH, AR, AH into AR 2, AH into SR 3, then BH, and finally BH into SR, that is 4. So under nature of overhead, we write fixed 9,000, variable 9,000. Standard rate, we have already worked out 3 and 1. Then SH into SR, it comes to 27,000 and 9,000. Actual hour is 9,900, both for fixed and variable. Actual rate is 3.10 and 0.90. So AH into AR, that is 2, it comes to 30,690 and 8,910. Then AH into SR, 29,700 and 9,900. BH 10,000, 10,000. So BH into SR, that is 30,000 and 10,000 respectively for fixed and variable. Then fixed overhead efficiency is 1 minus 3. Fixed overhead capacity is 3 minus 4. Fixed overhead expenditure, that is 4 minus 2. Variable overhead efficiency, 1 minus 3. Variable overhead expenditure, 3 minus 2. And total overhead cost variance, if we add all these, we'll get 3,600 at last. Now, in the verification, we're having fixed overhead volume, which is nothing but fixed overhead efficiency plus fixed overhead capacity. That is 3,000 adverse. Total fixed overhead cost, fixed overhead volume variance plus fixed overhead expenditure variance. Then total variable overhead cost variance is equal to variable overhead efficiency variance plus variable overhead expenditure variance. Total overhead cost variance is equal to total